Welcome back to the Balance Sheet, where we talk about all things in the world of women's wrestling. I am one of your co-hosts, King Ajar,
What's up, everybody? I'm Billy.
and we have a lot to cover this week. And we're going to start right at the top. We have had a recent title change topic in the WWE. So last week we discussed at length Jade Cargill winning the the WWE Women's World Title on SmackDown from Tiffany. Well, the other title on SmackDown has switched as well. So if you watch SmackDown this Friday, and by the ratings, a lot of you did not, Giulia, who at that point was the longest reigning United States Women's Champion ever, lost to Chelsea Green in, I believe, 1 minute and 40 seconds.
You're overshooting it. It was 1 minute and 35 seconds, sadly.
So, a lot of our listeners have really been upset about this, and obviously they're upset for Julia, they're upset for the women not getting time, and you yourself last week, so I will kick it over to you, was very upset that you have Tiffany as the longest reigning or third longest reigning of the modern era champion, and she doesn't get fully squashed, which if she did, you could accept that because it's a story. But then they lose in like 5 minutes. She loses in 5 minutes where she kind of fights, and you hated that. Well, I can only imagine you hate this even more. So I'll give the baton to you and let you discuss this.
Where to start? Um, well, I guess I'd start to say that we continue to take a lot of steps forward as fans of women's wrestling and women getting more representation every single year. And I'd say that almost everyone would agree that women have carried wrestling in 2025. Almost everything cool that's been going on in wrestling um, across the spectrum has been women. There's still a lot of work to do. A lot. So squashes are never good unless they are specifically told to say this, Jade Cargill is so angry and heelish and she's had enough and she's so powerful that if she's got a mean streak, you're gonna have trouble lasting against her. That would be a story. Um, Instead, we get this kind of in between 5 minute, 33-second match, which instead feels like, okay, Tiffany fought, her knee was hurt, da 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 da. Of itself, it's like good. And it more so looks like you just don't want to book the women to have a longer match. Fast forward to Friday. Giulia losing her title in a minute 35, not to a squash because Chelsea's so big and strong, but Chelsea cheats. This has nothing to do with Chelsea Green. Chelsea Green is one of the best in the world at creating content for herself. Chelsea is a master of getting on TV. She does a really, really good job on social media with the 1 minute she has, the 4 minutes she has, with the trip to AAA, wherever they put her on TV, she does a really, really good job. She's probably a WWE writer's dream, but they don't change titles the way that they did with Jade and the way that they did what they did to Tiffany and what they did to Giulia. They don't do this to the men. They just don't. Um, a minute 35, 5 minutes, 33 seconds. We got two big title changes in 7 minutes of ring time. It's disgusting. And the way that it reads to me is that the writers ran out of stuff for Tiffany. The writers ran out of stuff for Giulia. And when I say run out of stuff, they didn't try in the first place with Giulia at all and very little with Tiffany. And they just kind of said, well, we're done with this. We're going to move on to the next thing. They didn't come up with anything creative um, for Giulia at all. At least Tiffany, they gave her the grace of the knee injury. Giulia, this is just like, this is a shoulder shrug. And it's ridiculous because Giulia is a WWE signed talent. we've talked about this before. Both wrestlers, it's like if you own two stocks, do you want one to do better? No, you want both to do well. And they're in charge of booking, and they degraded their own stock in Giulia. They made her look bad on TV. And Chelsea is a fine enough wrestler for them to have wrestled a full match and for Chelsea to have won the same way that she won. Um, it's just lazy. And the SmackDown writers have been lazy all year for the men and for the women. The show was bad. The show was bad last week. You have your head booker tweeting big, oh, the landscape's changing, we're going to shake up the cards, and then proceeds to give you three straight two 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 of three shows are bad, and then one's kind of mediocre with the Raw show. So this is not the way to move a belt from one woman to another. It should never be the move. It doesn't happen to the men. The squash thing happens to the men, everyone will think of Brock and Kofi Kingston. But a long reigning US or Intercontinental men's champion doesn't lose in a minute 30 to heel foot on rope tactics. It just doesn't happen.
There's so much about Giulia and Chelsea that is wrong and is stupid and it's booked incorrectly that, we could probably spend a whole
The
podcast,
whole show.
right? So let's start here. First off, I actually thought of the three shows from WWE this week, I thought Raw was actually pretty damn good. Like the two women's tag
It was
match,
the best for sure.
good. And the Dom Ray segment got me. Like that was really, really good for me because like I felt like they touched on a lot of things. But okay. SmackDown has been a tire fire of a show all year. It just hasn't been good. Now, a lot of people think that's because Tiffany had the belt this whole time and they kept rinse and repeating her matches over and over again. For a lot of people who just watch for women, I actually think Charlotte and Alexa have been by far the saving grace of SmackDown. Like if you took
Agreed.
those two out of it, this show would be beyond in the toilet. Like whatever after it clogs and it goes under, that's where it would be. Let's talk about this. Okay. Number one, Giulia is actually a killer. Killers don't lose to stupid tactics like that in a minute and 30 seconds. Number two, they're both heels. So even though Chelsea is cheating, a heel should know she's trying to cheat. And a heel who has a manager can't overcome this. That doesn't make any sense. Three, Chelsea's actually a damn good wrestler, and obviously Giulia's incredible. Let them just go and have a great match for 15 minutes and then let Chelsea cheat and win.
The
Okay,
two of them wrestling would have been for 10 minutes would have been better than almost anything
yeah.
else they put on that
Let
show.
let Chelsea. You want to put the belt on Chelsea because she's hot right now in AAA. Her and Ethan have a great thing going. Mixed tag champs. They're super over as heels. People love to hate them. They're very entertaining. And quite honestly, I cannot. I love Giulia. I am a huge Giulia fan. I thought she was one of the best talents in the world in Stardom. She's a complete killer. And if they ever unlock that version of Giulia in WWE, I would love it. But I have to be honest here. I don't think she was doing anything with the belt because of how she was booked. So giving it to Chelsea doesn't bother me at all because I think Chelsea is going to do more for the belt, more with the belt, and she's a more entertaining character at this point. Chelsea is like must see TV for me. Giulia, sadly, who I love, is not. Now, with that being said, you could have done this so many different ways. Number one, why isn't Ethan Page helping her? Like that would actually make sense to me. Where Ethan Page like held Julia's leg down, being the guy who's her partner. That would be cool. Let them have a 10-minute match. Let Chelsea cheat to win at the end, no problem. But a minute and 30, to your point, what it tells me is there's just not a lot of talent in the writers' room in WWE. Like that's the other thing that frustrates me because and a lot of people have told me about us or vice versa, like, hey, you guys have such good thoughts. Why don't they hire you? And the truth is, like, yeah, that type of a job would be phenomenal because I think the TV would just be better to watch. The TV is just unwatchable, and this is part of it. Like, what you're telling me is your US title means nothing. It's a joke. You're telling me Giulia is a joke because and I have a rant about this. Can we stop in WWE having the rollout be the most unbeatable finish move of all time? I am so tired of the rollout cheap win, the hooking the tights, the foot on the ropes. Like these are all
The
19.
foot on the ropes is such a cartoonish, the referee ineptness that it takes for that to work, because it's not even like she like did it stealthily. She does a full press onto the second rope. It just makes you look like a comedy organization, which okay for certain matches, but with Giulia, it's
It was
bad.
cute in the 1980s when you didn't know anything about leverage and angles and you're watching as a kid and like um the one I remember the most vividly about the foot rope is Ric Flair beat Sting, got the title back in the Meadowlands, and he had his foot all the way on the top rope. And I always looked at that as like, what is the advantage of this? Like, I understand hooking the tights so somebody can't roll out of it, but the foot on the ropes, I hate. I thought this whole thing sucked. I was texting you, right? And you weren't because you were watching your Pistons, I think, beat up the Nets, and I'm texting
I'm
it,
smiling for those listening on
and
Spotify.
there are people where I am, the house I'm at, there are people moving around, and I have my YouTube login at girlfriend's house, and I'm like, okay, and I'm like, wait, Chelsea won. Does that mean I'm like, did she win the title? Wait, is she the champ? And then I rewound it, and I'm like, wait, she did win. And then at first they didn't give Chelsea the belt, so I'm thinking, oh, it's a non-title match. And then they took the belt and gave it to her. I'm like, what? She's the champ, and Ethan Page is like holding her on the shoulder, and I'm like, Giulia lost in a minute and a half or 2 minutes or whatever it was. And I'm like, this is the person that if we go back a year ago, her debut, she came out and got this massive pop, and she got in front of Roxanne, and people were like, holy shit, holy. And a year and a half later, she's a complete and utter joke. And it pains me because one of our listeners has long said that Tekla will be booked better in AEW than Giulia is in WWE. And I never thought that was possible. Like thought that was like impossible.
I think they
It's
nailed it.
happened. It's happened,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
it's completely happened. So I
I
don't know what to say.
I do want to be fair. Like, you know, it's not the holding the ropes. I think Mercedes just beat Mina holding the ropes. But this is a visual medium. And one, she held the ropes after like a 16-minute match and she was tucked in a corner. And I think she reached out with her hand at an angle that the referee would have had to move their whole body to see. So at least it was like sneaky. I'm not trying to make it seem like the heel could never win holding the ropes, but that was heel face. This is heel heel. And then the second thing is Chelsea, all the referee would have had to do is literally look at the pin the way that they're supposed to and would have seen her body like craned upward. So that's the part that bothered me. I will give Chelsea credit, and this is actually where Julia's booking is struggling. You mentioned Thekla. We talked about how good Becky Lynch's IC title reign was booked while Io was floundering as the women's champion, ring time wise.
Mhm.
And you and I both said Becky is probably one of the best wrestlers in the company at showing up to work on Monday or Sunday or whatever with a sheet of paper or whatever, and she's going into the writer's room and saying, "This is what my character would do in this situation. Oh, what about if I do this next?" Advocating for herself, and I don't think you learn to do that, in a year. You don't learn to do that in 2 years. Um, Bailey and Sasha famously didn't really know how to do that in 2017 and 18, and they kind of found their voice doing that in 2019. And you look, and their booking got a lot better. A lot of the times, it's not about booking wins and losses; it's about time and story. And how long have the WWE writers are the most hot and cold group of people in the world, and it just lends me to believe that it's either the talent's getting through to them with their own stories or they're not. Chelsea is probably A level at this. She always has an idea for herself. Becky is A level at this. Giulia probably doesn't know that she even needs to be doing this yet. And she's going to learn that the hard way, right? It's different from Japan and NJPW, where I'm sure they're just going to tell you what they want you to do, and or it's less storyline driven. But it's disappointing to see her get the title and them have nothing for her. What are those writers working on if one of the belts doesn't have a story written for it, or just a thin one like got a manager? That was the story. It never led to anything.
I don't agree. I don't disagree that I don't think too many women are going to be Becky Lynch or even Chelsea. The now Mercedes Moné when she found her voice in WWE, Bailey, Charlotte, etc. But here's my problem. You have four prominent Japanese women in the WWE right now, right? You have Asuka, Kairi, Io, Giulia. Three of them are booked almost impeccably. So you can't, I understand. Like I saw somebody say, oh,
Io
well,
wasn't as champion though.
but Io was, I never thought in WWE as the worst Io booking is better than the best Giulia booking. Like
Fair.
the worst they've ever done with Io is better than what they've done with Giulia. Now you can make the Kyrie argument because Kyrie was like a jobber for a while.
They're all on Raw though.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, so that it might be where this is going, which is to me, and I'm only looking at this because I might have inside information and I won't speak to how I get it. Knowing what Netflix paid for Raw, 10 years, $5 billion, $500 million a year, plus an option to make more, to pay more. Smackdown comes in at 230 million or whatever. And right now, the people who work at Comcast, which is the parent company NBC USA, they feel like they got ripped off because they're paying $230 million for like the lowest ratings of all time on that show ever. In the history of SmackDown, it's the lowest it's ever been. We're going to later debut a new segment talking about a high point for SmackDown, but here's my thing. Is all the talent in the writers' room on Raw? Is that what this is? Because when I watch the two shows, it feels like Raw, there's some thought put into it. It's not always good. It's not always good. And I am so tired of Punk and Jey Uso and all that stuff. But let's take the women's stuff. You have Asuka and Kyrie, who I think are the best act going in maybe wrestling right now. Like the
Yep.
stuff that they're doing is A plus. Rhea and Io are amazing. Stephanie and Nikki have something cooking. Roxanne and Raquel have been magnificent. Charlotte and Alexa are great, no matter where they are, but they're great on Raw as well. Could it just be that there is no real continuity in the SmackDown writers' room, and Triple H has let his road dog buddy just like have there's no quality control? Because when I watch it, it feels like to me everything on Raw at least has some kind of thought, and on SmackDown it doesn't. And you can't use the, oh well, it's a Japanese woman, because guess what? The other three women in the company are like main event players. So it can't be
Yeah.
that.
I
It's
wasn't
something like
saying.
that.
I was more saying because she's green
Yeah, yeah, no,
in
no, no.
this,
But I'm
just
just
like
wondering
Tiffany,
if
because
it's,
Tiffany, I think similarly hamstrung. I think you're right. I think it's talent in the writers' room. Um, it's no secret that Road Dogg is in charge of this show, and since that was announced, it's been a terrible show. Um, I think back to some of the bad years from 2017 and 18 when SmackDown used to be on like Tuesdays or Thursdays, Wednesdays. It moved around a lot, and it was significantly the B show. I think you're on to something. I mean, we used to do the Survivor Series, and it wasn't is SmackDown going to lose? It was how much are they going to lose by? Is Raw going to like wipe them out?
Yeah.
Pre them moving to Fox, I mean, again, we always come from the angle of we were obviously big horsewomen fans. I never wanted Sasha Banks on that version of SmackDown, right? Like that was like Raw was the A show, and I guess I hadn't thought about it that way in a while, but that is what it feels like Raw matters and SmackDown matters less.
Well, and when Fox, gave the $1 billion to WWE, SmackDown became the A show,
Right.
right?
With
So
Roman and
when
Sasha on it.
yeah, when they got Roman and Sasha, I wanted her to only be on SmackDown. I never
Right.
wanted her to be on Raw because I always knew just from my own sources that Fox as a network saw her, and she's my favorite wrestler, so they saw her as the face of this show with Roman Reigns. I mean, they were on the Fox lot billboards, like they had billboards on the Fox lot. So I was like, okay, Fox is it, and Fox spent a lot of money on her wardrobe. Like they spent money to make Sasha Banks jump off your screen because of all the research they did and all the stuff. To me, when I look at Giulia, she jumps off the page for me, but the way they treat her, she's a jobber, and SmackDown is just a tire fire of a show, and I've used that phrase 3 different times here. If Charlotte and Alexa did not exist, I could not watch that show. And I love women's wrestling, and I like what they're doing with Jade. Like, she's cutting very
I was
short.
gonna say I liked her
That was
promo.
good. Right, that was good. But holy cow, like the difference, like the women are getting time on Raw. Like, they're getting tag matches that are getting this is awesome chance, and they're getting 2 segments, and they're getting backstage segments, and they're getting nuanced. Here's the thing, I'm talking about how great Raw is. I didn't even talk about Bailey and Lyra, who have been great too, and they're on Raw. So it's like we got to get to a place here in WWE. I understand one network is paying 2x more for their show than the other show. But if I'm in Comcast, and I know there are people at Comcast, and there are people at NBC, and there are people at USA who deal with WWE, they need to get on the phone with Triple H and say, look, this might be the last contract you have with us, and you're going to be off cable TV. And if you get off cable TV, as much as the ratings are getting low, you don't want to be in a world where AEW is the only wrestling company on cable TV. You want to be on it because the way people are so angry at streaming networks now, I do think in 5 years we're going to go back to a world where more people go back to cable. I just think it's coming. I know people who are in that industry who tell me that the tide is turning. Like this YouTube Disney dispute has pissed so many people off that DirecTV, Cox, and Comcast and Spectrum have all gotten so many users back because they
The
lost.
other
Yeah. So,
the other thing is what is it? If you wanted access to every single NFL game, you would need 7 subscriptions.
yeah. So you need Amazon Prime, you need Netflix, you need Fox, NBC, ESPN, CBS, NFL Network. That's 7.
Yep.
And here's the reality of it, the model that they have in Canada. And
Did
again,
you even say YouTube?
oh, you're right, YouTube. So that's 8.
Yeah, YouTube's most of the games.
If you're in Canada, there is no better setup than the WWE. It's all on Netflix. You go to your Netflix app, you put in the letters WWE, you get Raw, you get SmackDown, you get NXT, you get every pay-per-view.
Yeah. It
Great. Saturday night's main event too. You get that too. It's perfect.
I I think you nailed it down pretty succinctly. I said that would never happen to the men. I don't think, Becky certainly wouldn't lose the IC title in a minute 30, and Stephanie's certainly not going to lose the women's title in 5 minutes. And I think it's a lazy writer's room that we can say over at SmackDown. And I think they just hit like it's like pulling a parachute or the eject button. They're like, okay, well, we got nothing for Giulia, so let's. And again, I think we both agree. Jade is champion.
Yeah,
Cool. Let's see where that leads.
far. Mhm.
Chelsea is champion. Cool. Let's see where nothing against those women. It's how we got there. And it makes me afraid for what Chelsea's champion looks like and what Jada's champion looks like because you still have those same poor writers writing for them on that show.
We don't talk men's wrestling here, but I'm gonna give you two questions because I think I know the answer. So you've always been an Aleister Black fan, right? Like you like him
I
as that.
liked him in NXT a lot. Yep. Yep.
Okay. And is it safe to say that you have never been a Cody fan?
I I think Cody has done a fantastic job since he's been in WWE. I did not miss him when he was gone. When he left the first time, I didn't miss him. I didn't follow him in ROH. I wasn't an AEW guy when he was over there. And when he first came back, I didn't see the hype. Their presentation of him has been A plus, and so I understand why he's in the position he's in. I'm not a fan.
But I'm going to the laziness of SmackDown. So you
Yeah.
have Cody Rhodes has had the belt for God knows how long. Even when he didn't have it, it felt like he had it. Every feud with Cody Rhodes is rinse and repeat, and it's boring. How many times is Drew McIntyre going to lose? Now you have Aleister Black challenge him, which I thought was fresh. I was like, oh, wait a minute, we might have something here. Like this is new. And then it's a run in by Drew McIntyre, right? So
Right.
like to
And he
me,
gets suspended again. I think that's like the
even the
third time in four
men's
years.
titles on that show are poorly booked. Now,
Yeah.
they're not as poorly booked as Giulia losing in a minute and 30, but they're still poorly booked by their own standards. When on Raw, I actually know who the tag champs are on Raw. It's actually AJ and Dragon Lee. I didn't even realize until we started to record. Like in my head, I'm like, who are the Smack? I'm like, who's the Smack? Oh, it's the Wyatts. They have the belt. I didn't even know that. So like obviously Dragunov doing his open challenge thing is cool, but like he's the only champion on SmackDown other than Charlexa that I remotely care about. But the point about
Why
SmackDown,
wasn't why wasn't Julia doing an open challenge
yeah,
this whole
like
time?
my my,
That would have
my
been
point
great.
about my point about SmackDown as a show is I've always thought a 2 hour wrestling show is like the sweet spot for good TV. And I used to think that the Fox presentation of SmackDown was great. I know Fox themselves didn't love a lot of the ratings they got. And again, they got dealt such a bad hand because 2 of their 5 years they dealt with the pandemic, where I look back on some of the stuff that they did we got as a wrestling fan during the 2019, 2020, 2021 eras. And I felt like that stuff was way better than some of the stuff we get today, but it was had no crowd. My point here is before we pivot to tag team wrestling, I just think that SmackDown as a show sucks. And whoever works on that show, like I don't want people to lose their jobs. I really don't. But I do think they need a better lead person. And so I am advocating for WWE to replace Road Dogg, put him somewhere else. Like, like when a coach doesn't get fired, but they give him a consultant role and they put him upstairs with the headset. That's what Road Dogg needs to be taken out of that role. They need to hire a fresh, creative writer who has real ideas, who can develop a cohesive show because the show is unwatchable. And if you don't believe me and you don't believe you, look at the ratings. They did less than 1 million viewers on SmackDown,
Yeah.
less than 1 million. So I don't want to hear that it's because of ratings are down everywhere. You know where ratings are not down? The NBA has had their highest ratings in 15 years. So it is possible to get fans excited about your product again. Because you know what? WWE was like this. And then when the bloodline hit, they went like this. So It's possible. So please, for the sake of our eyes, make SmackDown a better show. Speaking of SmackDown, mostly this happened on Raw, but I feel like right now women's tag team wrestling in both companies has kind of been the marquee. We've gotten some of the best TV matches we've gotten out of both companies from women's tag team wrestling. So this past week we had an incredible Rock Kabuki Warriors versus Bailey and Lyra. In
Yep.
essence, the winner gets a Charlexa title match. And then we had Stephanie Vacour and Nikki Bella against Roxanne and Raquel. And that was great because it's going to set up the Nikki Bella turn, keeping Raquel and Roxanne strong because they've been pinning Nikki Bella. I loved both of these matches. The crowd was hot for both of them. Again, smart WWE. They went to Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's actually Rio Rancho. I know that arena very well. I was actually thinking about going, but didn't want to go for a lot of reasons. 6,500 people, very small, intimate building. Crowd was great. I loved both of these matches and all the segments that came with it. Is Bailey and Asuka and Kyrie working together? What's going on there? Um, Stephanie and Nikki are obviously going to have a blow off this week after, Stephanie beats Raquel and Charlexa, man, their stuff with the Kabuki Warriors is great. So what'd you think about all that?
No, I completely agree. Asuka and Kyrie have been a couple of my favorite acts from the last several months. Um, Kyrie especially, it's so exciting to see them finally um, having her with her character kind of getting over with the fans more than just in the ring, but kind of layering in the Stockholm syndrome that she has with Asuka. Um, Probably something we haven't talked about enough, and I know we both agree. Um, Lyra has become a blue chip in ring performer. And I say become, I mean, she had the pedigree for a long time, but I expect her matches to be on that high standard now whenever she has them. Um, I think she's probably been most improved is not right because her NXT run was great, but I think that she's been one as effective as anyone in jumping to the main roster and proving to the main roster crowd how good she is in the ring. The pairing with Bailey's been great, but I just see her wrestle Kyrie and her stuff in the ring with Asuka. I mean, she can hang with anyone. So hugely impressed with Lyra. Um, WWE, you know, in good hands between Lyra and Roxanne. Um, we've talked about before, that's not the way that they're going to go about developing their roster most of the time. Most of the time, going forward, it's probably going to be PC, um, grown people, and or big free agent signings a la Giulia. Roxanne and Lyra is that they kind of came up exactly how Becky, Bailey, and Sasha came up. Charlotte was not experienced on the indie scene, but Roxanne and Lyra have that similar pedigree to the others, and um, they're a better show for having both of those women on there. I think Roxanne's done a great job in her role, but we don't talk about Lyra enough probably because she hasn't been fully minted yet with that title run. Though she had the IC belt, I think she's just done great work this year. I think she's been like a top 6, 7 woman in ring this year. If you look at the amount of good matches she's had, I'm not saying she's top 6. If I had to name the top 6 in ring performers, I'm saying she's like this calendar year, she's probably got a top 6 or 7 match resume, certainly in North America.
I don't think that's a hot take at all. I mean,
You know,
she had a classic with she had the classic with Becky.
yep,
Then she had the great three-way with Bailey and Becky at Evolution, which is phenomenal. She's had so many
yep.
great TV matches. right? She's had TV matches that have been fantastic. She's had the 2 out of 3 falls with Bailey. Um, yeah, I have underrated Lyra for a while, and I shouldn't. She's great. She's won me over. She's become a pretty good promo. She has a good character to her. She has a lot of charisma, and she's just a hell of a worker. Like she's great in the ring. Like she's just
Yep,
I think Roxanne, kind of overshadowed her a little bit in NXT, but like now on the main roster, they're both getting their shine. And again, it goes back to what I was saying 5 minutes ago. They do a lot of things well on Raw with the women. They do none of it on SmackDown. If
it's true.
A lot of people said, well, some people said Julia should move to Raw and Bailey and Lyra should move to SmackDown. And I'm like, okay, you move Bailey and Lyra to SmackDown. What are they going to do? Are they going to just twiddle their thumbs like all the other women do? Like, to me, that's my fear of any talent going to SmackDown. Like right now, it's the graveyard. But back to Lyra, she's fantastic. I have nothing but praise for her. It's still awkward watching her wrestle without knee pads. It really throws me off. It's like Norman Smiley back in the day when I would watch him wrestle and he wouldn't have knee pads. It was weird. But I mean, she's a hell of a worker, man. I mean, she is a great, and I think it's cool to see like a Lyra and a Roxanne and women who grew up watching, the Four Horsewomen are now themselves becoming top stars. It's really kind of that, it kind of speaks to the importance of what the 2015 era horsewomen did for women's wrestling because they opened this door because you have Blake Monroe, you have Tiffany, you have Roxanne, you have Lyra, you have Maya World. You have so many of these women who are stars.
Billy Starks.
Yeah, Billy Starks because of them. So I think it's really, really good. Yeah, like I just think Raw has put on a really good product when it comes to the women this year. They've had all the good TV stuff. When is the last Smackdown women's TV match that you were like, oh, I gotta go out of my way to watch? I feel like it was Tiffany Nia in that Falls Count Anywhere match or whatever, and that was only because Nia got her face blasted open, and I kind of wanted to see how that visual was, but I don't
I
remember
remember,
having good
yeah,
matches.
the timeline excited about the one Tiffany Jade match where you could see that they had some pretty
Oh
good
yeah, that was
chemistry
a good one.
together.
Mhm.
Um, you know what though? I think we're talking about the title matches on SmackDown, and that's the issue is there's no stories underneath it. Everything you just said about Raw actually doesn't involve the women's champion, right? So I think SmackDown just hasn't built out their women's universe nearly as well. And again, that takes writing and cohesion and consistency, and that's everything that's lacking over there. Um, but yeah, we've had women, Bailey and Lyra have cooked 2 straight weeks on Raw because their Charlexa match was very good, obviously. So that division is hot. Pivoting to AEW, we've got some praise for the women, and similar to WWE, we've got some lashings for management. So um, we'll save the lashings. There's some disappointing news that came out of Collision last night. On the praise side, they are building out their women's universe maybe better than ever in AEW with the women's tag tournament and then upcoming Blood and Guts, which is a little bit intertwined. Um, let's start with tag. We had Babes of Wrath, which is Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron versus Athena and Mercedes. When Athena and Mercedes didn't officially get a name, that was probably not a great sign when you have an official team name and then it's Mercedes and Athena. I know some people pitched CE Overlords, which was, I think, a fun name. But you predicted this correctly. Willow and Harley went over in the match. It was a very, very good match. The Athena Mercedes double team moves have you really, really mad that this might be their only tag team match. because there was some really, really good work done. But it was a great match. I enjoyed it a lot. Willow and Harley move on as Chris scared Mercedes out of the ring, essentially, and left Athena to fend for herself, and she's the one who took the pin versus Harley Cameron.
As a fan of tag team wrestling my whole life, it warms my heart that in the last 2 weeks, we've gotten two phenomenal women's tag matches with real stakes. You know, you had Charlotte Alexa versus Bailey and Lyra on Raw, and I am pretty confident that is the best match of Alexa Bliss's career. Well, I'm 100% confident she's never had a better match than that tag match. And that match was an instant classic, and it had me on the edge of my seat. In the same breath, I'm excited that a women's tag team tournament in AEW is getting real stakes with real time. I thought the Babes of Wrath against, Athena and Mercedes is was great storytelling on multiple levels. Number one, Athena and Mercedes aren't really friends. They're kind of the Charlotte Alexa allies of convenience type of deal, right? But they don't have a real intertwined story. They're just like, you're the friend of my friend is my enemy, or kind of thing. To me, a Harley and a Willow should beat them because they are a cohesive team. They have a name, they dress the same, so they should win because a team is greater than the sum of the individual parts, right? Number two, Chris is involved, which I knew was going to happen. And that's why I predicted that they would win. Because to me, Chris Statlander is Batman and Mercedes is her Joker. And Batman is finally getting a one up on the Joker. And that's what she's doing. She's getting in Mercedes's head. It used to be Mercedes was always in Chris's head. Now Chris is back in Mercedes's head. She's cost her the tag tournament and more titles. And at the end of that show, she was scared to get in the ring for blood and guts, which I thought was great because they're playing on real life Mercedes, who has always said, "Oh, I don't know about the blading and blood. That's not my thing." And she's scared. And Chris comes in, beats her up, and then runs into the ring. And I think it's great because Chris is becoming a foil for her. And I have long said that to build the Mercedes, like to get her to be this heel that she can be, which she's phenomenal at, she needs an adversary. And clearly, Chris has become that. It's not Tony Storm, it is Chris Statlander, who is her Batman. And I loved everything about this match. This match, and yeah, Athena and Mercedes were doing some moves I've never seen before, and I watched tag team wrestling pretty much my whole life. And the when she was gonna do the money maker, but she slammed her into it. That was one of the cooler spots I've seen in a while. Phenomenal match. Crowd was into it. Crowd was hot, and it was the right winner. I am not
Yeah,
a fan of the Athena Mercedes winning being the first champs. I think that's boring booking. I like this. I'm glad they lost. I'm glad that they set up the Chris story and they furthered that. And I'm happy for Harley, man, getting a big win. And because
yeah,
Harley is one of the most entertaining parts of AEW to me, and I'm just happy that she's getting kind of a semi push. So, this now sets up Blood and Guts, right? Oh, what
yeah.
happened? What's the other bracket? How does that play out? The other bracket. Sorry.
They haven't even done any of the first round matches on the other side. So on this bracket, we had Sky Blue and Julia Hart advance over Jamie and Queen Aminata. Queen Aminata, it's come out that she's injured. So um, second round match will be Babes of Wrath versus Sky Blue and Julia Hart. I fully expect, I think Willow and Harley to win that. Would be my bet. Um, Real quick, for the fans that are that Athena and Mercedes lost, and I totally get it because they're the two most dominant singles champions that there are out there. You nailed it. Cohesive team beats one and one together. love even most about this is this told so many stories and directions and created it was universe building on the women's side. Athena's actually going to be wrestling Harley for the ROH championship in a couple weeks here. So you've got a story lead for Athena. Athena came out of that match. Athena's mad at Harley for pinning her. She's mad at Billy for not helping, and she's mad at Mercedes for pinning her. That's three directions Athena could go. Mercedes lost her the match, so that puts more heat on their upcoming title match. Athena's mad at her now, so they could be going at it. Willow is still set up perfectly to be the one to take the TBS title from her. And here's the one that I think everyone should be a fan of. She has a real reason to beat the crap viciously out of Harley now. Harley was someone who was a comedy act, beneath her, not worth her time. Yeah, I'll wrestle you in Australia and beat you in front of your family. Big deal. I'm the best. You're not very good. I'm not afraid of you. The cake, and now she cost her the tag team title, a chance at the tag team title. There's a real reason for Mercedes to want to viciously pick on and beat Harley in this match on Wednesday that she does not want to be a part of.
Mhm.
Mercedes is the vicious heel, but she's also calculated. She's smart, little cowardly. She don't want to fight Chris or Jamie Hayter or Willow in that cage. But she probably wants to take a piece of Harley home with her. And I think that's the story that they're going to tell. And now there's a real reason for her to want to quote unquote hurt Harley.
Mhm.
So that ending that I think we're all visualizing has the story has been set up for that to be the case. Um, Chris restrained well. Chris and Willow restrained while Mercedes brutalizes Harley. I think is
Yeah,
could be an iconic ending to that match.
I um I would
And gets Harley more over, by the way, even more over.
I yeah, and I don't know if they'll ever do it, but I would set this up where Harley ends up eventually taking the TBS title off of Mercedes. But the way I would do this, if I were booking, and Tony, if I know somebody on your staff listens to our show, go back to an all-time moment for me as a wrestling fan as a kid. I got the videotape from my cousins in South Carolina, which was it was the Russians were gonna beat up Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair. The Horsemen came down. They were gonna help, obviously Rick and Dusty with the Russians, but they ended up turning on Dusty Rhodes. And so the way I would do this is you got to figure out a way to get all the women out of the cage except for the bad women and Harley. The cage cannot allow the good women to come back in, and Mercedes is just beating her to a pulp, and the other women are blocking the entrances. And so once they get in, Harley's laid out, and Chris is almost like holding her like Rocky is holding Apollo Creed. And that is what I would do to end the show, which is, Chris is holding her and she's looking right at Mercedes. And then when they get to Full Gear, like I said, she gives Mercedes like five Saturday night specials to kind of really beat her into a pulp. And then maybe they have another blow off match. But that's how I would do this. It has to be where Harley is the sacrificial lamb and she gets beaten to a pulp to almost the point where you don't know if Harley's career is going to continue. And what I would do is after Chris beats Mercedes at Full Gear, and we'll talk about Full Gear in a sec, Harley's return is the next match, which is a stip match, and she ends up costing Mercedes the final match against Chris at World's End. That's how I would do this because they have finally two women in Harley and Chris who the crowd loves that Mercedes can really be a heel and get a heel reaction, not a sitting on my hands, what are you doing for me now reaction, which I know you hate. That's how I would do it. But speaking of Mercedes and Chris, well, and I'll let you get your thoughts on what I just laid out. Mercedes and Chris aren't going to main event. And I don't know how you guys all figure this stuff out because like I was busy yesterday night and I was doing some stuff with a girlfriend and there's my timeline's going crazy like rolling eye emoji, Mercedes and Chris won't main event. I'm like, how did they find this out? I'm watching Collision on my phone and I didn't see anything about a main event. So how did you guys come up like my thoughts on Harley and how they do that, but how did you guys find out that it's not the main event, I guess?
Samoa Joe, and Hangman, I believe, were because I wasn't watching that part either. Were announced as the main event. It was said in the main event of Full Gear. So unless they're pulling like an all in thing and there's multiple main events, um, it doesn't look like Mercedes and Chris is going on last. So I talked about. By the way, I love your blood and guts idea. Even if they can't do something so intricate, even having Chris like handcuffed or tied to the cage, and Mercedes just has Harley passing out in the statement maker. I think just some sort of visual of someone maniacal, and then Chris kind unable to help. The lashings for Tony are: we are 6 years into your company existing, and we still have not had a women's pay-per-view main event. We have not had a women's match go on last. And the frustrating thing about it is WWE is measurably getting colder. Measurably getting colder. And the only thing that is keeping them somewhat warm is their women's division. No one would say Rhea Ripley's cold. No one would say Io Sky's cold. The tag division is on fire. And in your own side of things, Chris is as over as she's ever been. Willow is getting gigantic pops. I know you named Chris and Harley. I'm going to add Willow to that. Willow is someone who is getting pure baby face reactions and letting heels do great work on her side of things. So you're running out of reasons not to pull the trigger on this. And every time you have a women's match that is a better match than the men's title match, it feels like we're putting a little bit less work into the women's match than we could. And if that's true or not, that's the perception. Now, there's no reason Chris and Mercedes should not have been main eventing this. There's a history there. Um, Everyone in the world knows that Samoa Joe is not beating Hangman Page. Would you agree with that?
Mhm.
We're
Well,
talking like
yeah, I don't think Samoa Joe is going to beat Hangman Page, but I don't really know who's good. I don't know where they're going even with the whole Hangman Page story. I guess where I was, I'm not like I said, I have long said on this show since we started it. I have been saying this that I don't see a world in AEW where the women main event. I'm sorry. Tony has yet to prove to me that he cares that much about women's wrestling. I know people are talking about how, and you're correct, sir, that the women's division is being built up well in AEW. They have tag belts, they're doing stuff. I'm not saying they're not. But what indication have you ever gotten in the 6 years this company has been in existence that the women really matter to the owner? Now, I know
right.
stars matter. I know stars matter and characters matter. He loves Tony Storm. He loved oh God. What was Blake's first name? Mariah May.
Mariah May.
I know he loves Mercedes Moné. I know he loves the women wrestlers. I know he's a fan of women's wrestling, but he is an old NWA booker. And I always think that he will always main event the men's title. And there's nothing anybody can tell me to convince me otherwise. There's nothing. And Mercedes and Chris, to me, in my opinion, I feel like the two Chris matches put Mercedes on the AEW map. not the map. Not obviously because she had a Hall of Fame resume before she ever walked into AEW. But I mean, that was the first two matches where AEW fans were like, "Oh, now I see why we paid this woman so much money. Now I get it. Like she's phenomenal." I remember reading about those two matches on my timeline, and AEW fans were like, "Whoa, she's great. Like she's amazing." Like
Yeah.
they were just mad Chris didn't win, but they were like, these are still two of the best women's matches I've ever seen in my life. And she had the real hot streak where she did the Hazuki match in between that. But like, where I'm going with this is that I want to sit here and tell you that I had hope that this would main event, but I never did. It's just
Yeah.
that there's nothing he's said. What has he done to show us that this was going to main event? Why did we think?
Right. I can use their own good writing against him to prove your point. And I do want to call out good writing. Um, but it's like the meme with the clown makeup, right? Why did we think it was finally going to be Full Gear? Well, because they have history and they had two of the best matches in all of AEW last year, even though the first one won in heatless and the crowd was like, yeah, and they were so good that by the end of it, the crowd was in a fit. This third match actually has it will go in hot, and you know, I say this all the time. There's ever going to be a match that is better than Brooklyn. We will know ahead of time whether a match could be better than Brooklyn. Hazuki Mercedes is a great example. That match went in with not a chance to actually be better than Brooklyn because there wasn't a story and there wasn't a thing behind it. You often say it's a much better wrestled match than Brooklyn.
I think so, yes.
If a match ever, no match will ever surpass Brooklyn as far as impact goes. But if you're able to say crowd in a fit, Twitter in a fit, the world just, oh, that was the best match of the year, like that could happen. And you will know ahead of time, oh man, this match has the type of juice that it could get to that plane. This Chris Mercedes match, if War Game or if Blood and Guts goes right, could get to that level. Samoa Joe Hangman is a rematch from a non-main event match last month. We were talking earlier and it was your idea, but it's the clown makeup thing again because do we trust Tony to do it? If Mercedes Chris is told well enough and there's a rematch, does it main event World's End? Because they did wrestle at Full Gear last year and World's End. Do they run both back? I'm not going to sit here and tell our listeners that that's going to happen because Tony hasn't deserved that trust. One thing I will say, this is what I meant about using their writing against them. Chris's promo last night on Collision, fantastic. And she said, and I've been begging AEW to do this for a long time, and they finally started doing it about 6 months ago. You've been begging them to. Mercedes is the. There's no reason AEW shouldn't say that Mercedes Moné is the greatest women's wrestler of all time. There's zero reason for them to not say that. Becky Lynch calls herself that on WWE TV. Mercedes calls herself that on AEW TV. AEW should call her that. Just say, yeah, the most unimpeachable resume that's ever existed in wrestling. They don't even have to say WWE. And Chris said it last night. Chris said, never have two things you don't have. I don't have the money. I don't have the fame. I will never have the most legendary resume in women's wrestling. I'll never be the greatest women's wrestler of all time like you are. She said that in her promo. That's really, really, really effective writing because when Chris topples her,
Yeah.
it adds heat and juice. And you can credibly say that on your TV show. They called Roman Reigns the greatest draw in the history of wrestling when he was doing his thing. That may be true, it may not be true, but you can credibly say it because they're, you
Uh,
know,
okay, so I have to really pay more attention to Collision. I'm sorry. Where did this promo happen? I was watching this show last night on my phone, and I'm hearing about Samoa Joe and Hangman Page being the main event and a fantastic Chris promo. I'm a huge Chris fan. I got to go find it now. I didn't
it
even know
it,
this
it
promo
it it
was-
was like a backstage. She's just sitting with the belt, just kind of talking to the camera. It's like a casual backstage promo, but she says You have all these things I don't have. Go. You should definitely watch it. She
Well, I'm
calls
I'm gonna
Mercedes
watch it
the
as soon as we finish recording. But like,
she calls Mercedes the most legendary woman in the history of wrestling. But she says, I have two things you don't have: one, the belt, and B, the focus that it takes to win this belt. You're collecting trinkets. I have focus. I have focus on beating you while you're doing all these other things. Was essentially
so
the promo. It was
so
really
in
good.
essence, what you want AEW to do for Mercedes Moné, and clearly, whether people want to admit this in WWE or not, they are online and they are in X chats and X timelines that compare Mercedes Moné to Io. And here's why I know this. So in the last week, these five individuals have made these comments, and I wrote it because I knew this topic was going to come up today. Io is the best wrestler in the world, not male, not female, the best. CM Punk. I don't think there's a better athlete in professional wrestling than Io Sky, AJ Styles. Io is simply the best women's wrestler ever, Blake Monroe. Io Sky is the best wrestler in WWE, Tyrese Halliburton. Io is my favorite wrestler, Michael Cole. All of those comments have come out in the last 2 weeks. That is not an accident.
Yeah.
They see that their former, best in the world, which is meaning not that she isn't, but Mercedes was always the person they used to trumpet this way in WWE. And then when she left, they're not going to trumpet her anymore. But now Io is their person. So they're clearly having their own talent go out in front of crowds saying Io is the best. That's what AEW probably should start doing with Mercedes.
Well, AEW. I think it's a response to AEW because since Daniel Bryan has been on commentary,
Oh,
he says
oh.
she's the best in the world, and he said before, I think that he was the one. It was a Renee RJ City thing. They were sitting in the ring. He said Mercedes is one of the best performers in the world, not male, not female,
Mhm.
one of the best. He said nobody in the history of wrestling is more prepared than she is. That's why she's able to defend all these belts. Blah blah blah. So they're finally doing it, but they spent 12 months not doing it, which was stupid. The first year, it should have been the narrative. We signed the best in the world. This is where the best wrestle. Her right there. She did it. She wrestles for us. Tune in on Wednesday. It was a huge miss.
Yeah, I'm really I look, Chris and Mercedes have amazing chemistry. And honestly, if they knock another match out of the park like they did the first two, there's a real case to be made that Chris now, other than Bailey, is Mercedes's best opponent ever.
Yeah.
Above Becky, above Bianca, above Charlotte, above I guess Willow. I know you are very high on the Willow Mercedes combo, but let me tell you, man, that
I,
first match, that match was so damn good. The
I'll,
both
I'll,
were great, but the first one, holy cow.
I'll totally agree. I'll make a bold statement. I think she's already number two.
Okay.
Um, those first two matches are so good. And the only thing that holds the first match back is at that time Mercedes was coming off the Brit match and the bad Sheeta match, and the crowd knew she was winning, and Chris was did the weird heel thing that wasn't quite working, and it was heatless going in. Now they created heat by the middle of the match, and it was in a fervor by the end of it. And then the second match was also very good. If they give us either the first match or the second match and just do 10% more story, it will be a match of the year candidate because the
I
crowd will care from minute one. And I, that first match is actually underrated because it's so good. The crowd kind of sat on their hands for the
I
first 5 minutes or so.
I know you are a very big proponent of one-on-one matches to you will hold a higher value than triple threats, right? Like you're
Yeah.
a so I'm saying this with respect, and I could be totally wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I'll admit I'm wrong the next day we record. I don't know if any women's match this year, in my eyes, is going to top the Mania three-way because I think they had
Bar so high. Bar
they
so
had a
high.
perfect storm, right? They had this match that if they ran it 100 times, they would get it wrong 99 times. But they did it the one time that it worked perfectly. They didn't have wasted spots, they didn't have wasted motion, they didn't miss anything. But it was such a hard match to replicate, right? Because you saw it with Naomi, Bianca, and Rhea. And I know, no, sorry, Naomi, Rhea, and Io. I know Naomi and Bianca are two different women, but like it's hard to replicate that NASCAR for F1, three-way. But with the built-in story that Mercedes and Chris have, and how Chris ends up winning and finally beats her Joker, I could make the case that it'll be the best match of the year because
It's probably the
emo-
last match that has a shot to pass that one.
emotionally, I think people are going to be more invested in Chris beating her. Because let's be honest here, the Rhea Io Bianca match was phenomenal. I mean, it's a classic. But the story going into the match was very wonky. Rhea's kind of the baby face, but she's whining. She really shouldn't even have been in the match because she lost every opportunity getting to the match. Bianca was getting booed, but she was actually right because she didn't do anything wrong. Io was getting cheered because Io was like standing up to these two women. But the story was, oh, Io is this hapless underdog. Oh, by the way, Io has a winning record against both of them, which that doesn't even make sense. So to me, this match, I do think has a legitimate chance. Maybe it's not better wrestled. Like, Bailey Sasha is the better overall package than Sasha or Mercedes Suzuki. But I think in the ring, Suzuki Mercedes was better. I think this could be that case where if you take the totality of everything leading up to it and the match, it ends up lasting longer than the three-way because the three-way is like a moment in time where they caught lightning in a bottle. But I will tell you this, I already ordered Full Gear. I have never done this with an AEW pay-per-view, but I have already ordered Full Gear because
Yep.
I think this is going to be one of those matches that we're all right away online saying, wow, did you see that? I think these two women are going to have one of the best matches of all time. I do.
Yep.
I do.
I can't wait to see it. Couple more notes, and then we got a new segment to move on to. I think it's worth mentioning, just for anyone to fully catch up. So the bad guys, that's Mercedes team, has the advantage in blood and guts. They got that through Megan Bayne defeating Mina Shirakawa, who is now replacing Queen Aminata. Uh, you know, good vibes out to Queen Aminata that she gets healthy from her injury as soon as possible, and hopefully she's good. Um, Megan Bayne wins that match. Then the good guys win the match with Jamie Hayter and Sky Blue, and then in the tiebreaker, Thekla beats Harley Cameron. So the bad guys have the advantage. Two more housekeeping notes. Shout out to Maya World and Hyann, who were on Collision. It was the Collision debut for Hyann. They wrestled TJ. They also did the ROH taping and wrestled Athena and Billy. Let's just not mince any words. Tony, go ahead and sign both of those women. They will elevate your division. Two of the better indie women out there, especially from an upside standpoint. And the House of Glory match that Mercedes will be having next Saturday has been announced to be Nor Phoenix Diana. A lot of people are very, very excited about this. She is she's a champion from the Malaysian. Let me get the company. But did you see that announcement?
I did. I am very excited for that match because I think that in professional wrestling, this is not like in basketball, football, it's not as big a deal where like you get to like when Allen Iverson crossed up Michael Jordan, I know he said that was like the biggest thing in his life because Michael Jordan was his hero. But in wrestling, like when you get to actually wrestle the person, like when you grow up and you're like watching this person and then you get to get in the ring with them, that's a different level of like honor. And so like when you look at, I'm sure if Lyra ever got to wrestle Mercedes, or if like when Mayu Iwatani wrestles Io Sky, it's a different level. So I'm very happy for her getting to wrestle Mercedes because I know she's long stated that the aforementioned Sasha Banks was the reason she became a women's wrestling fan and wanted to wrestle. So I think it's great. And the stuff that Mercedes is doing, obviously next week PWI's list will be out, and I'm sure we'll spend a lot of time on dissecting that list. But what Mercedes is doing to open up doors for these other women who would not get the spotlight that they would get without her is going to be one of the things that when her biography is written for her Hall of Fame, it should really be at the top of the charts on describing her impact. Like I could make the case that this is as big an impact as the stuff her and the Horsewomen did in 2015 because these women need an outlet to get seen. And I think that the one thing I've noticed is when Mercedes wrestles somebody, people in WWE pay attention. Doesn't matter who it is. They're like, oh, I gotta watch this person. That's how Stephanie McCourt got signed. So it's important, and I think she's doing great work, and I'm excited for that match as well. And I will definitely be supporting that and getting it. But yeah, you
Uh,
talk.
so Nor Phoenix, Diana is the APAC. We want to make sure that we call out the APAC wrestling women's champion. They're based out of Malaysia. I think Mercedes had hinted that she had tried to go wrestle in Asia, but the timing didn't work out, so they brought Nor here. Um, I've got some friends on X that say she can really go. So this isn't like I think people have high expectations for this match. She's very, very good. She's the first uh it's a representation match as well, not only for Malaysia, but this woman is the first hijab wearing professional wrestler and champion. So really, really cool representation. Um and shout out to House of Glory for booking what is a dream match for a lot of fans, right? A lot of fans in um Asia Pacific, this is their, this is I've seen said the top wrestler in the world, not from Japan.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's a dream match for the women. And look, Mercedes, she has a high bar. When she steps in the ring, you expect greatness. She has not disappointed us with all the women she's wrestled in these independent promotions. Um, I still think one of my matches of the year is the match she had with Emerson Jane. I don't know if it's my favorite Mercedes match this year, but it's going to be in my top three up to this point. I do have a feeling the Chris match is going to blow all her other matches out of the water this year because her and Chris just have magic. Like they click, and
yeah.
even when they touch, like in these backstage segments or whatever, there's a magic to it. But yeah, you kind of gave up the spoilers. So we're going to be debuting a new segment. We're not, don't worry, top five's coming. We're going to do top five. We're going to debut a new segment, and I want to give a shout out to our good friend. She's actually been on the podcast before. Her name is Chen, and Chen says one of her most enjoyable parts of our show is the history that we provide and the timeline and kind of the filling in of the gaps. And so what we have decided to do is take her commentary and make it into a weekly segment. And what it's going to be called is This Week in Women's Wrestling History. We also want to debut our first sponsor. And so This Week in Women's Wrestling History is brought to you by our good friends at Kicked Out. Kicked Out is your sneaker store for all of your online shopping needs. For all of you hype beasts out there who want the latest in Nike, Adidas, New Balance, Asics, Supreme clothing, chromed hearts, all of those hard to find items in the high end fashion world, go to www.kickedout.com and right now use the code BS for balance sheet and you get 10% off your first online order. There will be a link in all of our platforms, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, Samsung, or of course YouTube. You will have a link and go there and click and use the code BS and you will get 10% off your first online order. We look to be doing more things with Kicked Out in the future and more to come on that. So, this week in women's wrestling history, so I have a good one for you, sir. November 6th, 2020. That is 5 years ago this past week. What
Yeah.
happened? Well, there were two very important events in the world. There was this little thing called an election in America to elect a new president,
Which wasn't called yet.
which wasn't called yet. So on a Friday night, November 6th, 2020, there was a rematch for the women's world title. At the time, it was called the Smackdown women's title between the defending champion, Sasha Banks, against the challenger and the former champion, her former best friend, Bailey. This was significant because up to that point, Sasha Banks had never defended a title successfully, singles title in WWE. Never. And this is coming off of their Hell in a Cell Classic. This match was the opening segment on SmackDown. And according to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, the whole segment did 2.52 million viewers and had a zero point 0.7 in the demo. And it carried SmackDown to number one in all of cable that day against all of the election coverage on Fox, CNN, MSNBC, and all of the terrestrial networks. That match, after it ended, the show lost 35% of its viewers, but still, that segment did so well that it allowed SmackDown to win the night. And why is this significant? Well, number one, this was with no crowd.
Yep.
This was a match that happened in front of a green screen, essentially. Number two, it's why this podcast exists. We've always said women's wrestling not only is a draw, we can now definitively make the argument it's the reason wrestling is even good in 2025 because there isn't anything
Yeah.
on the men's side that is really noteworthy. Also, it came at a time where Fox was significantly questioning whether them acquiring SmackDown was even worth it because up to that point, the ratings really didn't deliver this type of juice. And from this time, for the rest of their time on Fox, they did great ratings through Roman Reigns and the Bloodline, through Sasha Banks, through Bianca Belair, etc. But this was kind of the harbinger that kind of turned the tide of ratings. And another reason why this is a super important match is because when you give two women at the caliber of Sasha Banks and Bailey 20 minutes, a real story, real stakes, real juice, you can produce magic. So we wanted to give everybody this historical representation because I think what Sasha and Bailey did in 2019 and 2020 with their feud, I don't think it gets talked about enough. I think it's a little slept on because it had no crowd. And for me personally, in the history of women's wrestling, and I've been watching this thing a long time, it's the greatest story ever from start to finish. When Bailey turned heel to when Sasha beat her for the title is the best women's story ever. And to me, it is the third best it's the third best WWE story of all time behind Hogan Macho Man Elizabeth, the bloodline. And the bloodline leading up to Cody Rhodes winning the title. Nothing after
Yeah.
that has intrigued me, but up to that point with the Sami Zayns, the Kevin Owens, the Jey Usos, all of that stuff, those are the three best stories in the history of WWE for me. I'm probably missing Austin McMahon, but I looked at that as more of a feud than a story. To me, these are the three stories that were told the best. And honestly, I think we need more women's wrestling stories like this one.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of nailed everything. The match was incredible. It was incredible because it had a story. Um, they got a year to write this story. Frankly, I think most people believe that without the pandemic, the story probably would have been derailed because there were men and women who stopped showing up for work for various reasons. And I don't say that as like they should have, they had real reasons to not be there. Roman Reigns had to protect his health, which totally made sense. Um, and Mercedes, Sasha Banks at the time, and Bailey were given the reins. If you remember the very first empty arena, Smackdown, they were put on commentary to be their crazy selves. And they had their fingerprints all over that pandemic era television. And it's actually some of my favorite television that they've done, certainly on the women's side. Them going over to NXT, the Golden Role Model run as tag title. Um, it was a great slow burn too, because if you remember correctly, we were waiting for Sasha to turn on Bailey at WrestleMania 36. They had the 5-way. There's that great shot of Sasha behind her, almost looking jealous, but she's never the one that turned. It ended up being Bailey, the one that turned, and then ultimately Sasha unseated her as the champion and didn't even care about the belt. If you remember, winning Hell in a Cell, didn't even look at the
Like I
belt.
said, from beginning to end, it was the best story that they've ever told with women. And truly, I hated the huggers. What are they called? The Boston Hug.
Boston Hub
Oh,
connection.
awful, awful, terrible. But the Golden Role Models to me are the best women's team of all time.
Yep.
The Golden Role.
What people may not know is this SmackDown match, the 2.5 million people that tuned in, was the bow on the story because it wasn't just good enough for Sasha to win. At that time, Sasha had never successfully defended a title on the main roster. So not only did she need to win it, she needed to win a rematch. And all of the women's fans and wrestling fans in general were tuned in for this because there was a real chance that, we're 5+ years into the main roster. Is like there's a real chance that she could lose. She had lost to Alexa Bliss 8 days later. Like, would they pull the rug out on under her
They
again? And
played they
played it
smartly
perfect.
played on that fear the whole title reign. Here's the thing. I don't I look in the historical footnote of Mercedes Moné Sasha Banks's career. In my humble opinion, I don't think I enjoyed her work ever more than I did from the Golden Role Model story, the beginning, to the Bianca match.
Right.
I think the stuff she did with Carmella is so slept on and so
It is.
underrated. The backstage segments, the wine glass turning and then she smashed her with it. The promos they cut against each other, the match that they had, the one match they had in it was extreme.
TLC.
Yeah, one of the best matches. I just think that version of Sasha Banks or Mercedes Monet felt larger than life to me. And again, it's nothing against the work she's doing now. I think she's doing phenomenal work and she's a magnificent wrestler and somebody I spend my hard-earned money to see, but she doesn't feel as big a superstar now as she did in that era of the Fox Smackdown when she was in Pizza Hut commercials and she was on the billboards. She just felt like the biggest star to me in the world at that point with Roman Reigns. And I don't think she feels like that now.
Not to say she can't get back there, and the stardom I think that she's around the world, maybe feels on a smaller scale, but maybe is more impactful in the long term, is kind of what you said with what she's doing for women in independent wrestling. We're about to get to our top five, but I actually have a surprise for Raj and the group. It's a joke a little bit, but I always want to shout out the people who comment on YouTube and Spotify. We love the interaction. We appreciate you guys listening every week. We do have a YouTube comment from last week that I did not read to Raj ahead of time, and I will surprise him with now, and we'll get his knee jerk reaction from Lovers Lane 3956. You all acting like you're not in the same house. Well, we are not in the same house. For those listening to us for the first time, second, third time, maybe we don't say it every week. Uh, if I was being announced as a wrestler, I would be from Nashville, Tennessee, by way of San Diego, California. And my good friend Raj here would be El Paso, Texas, by way of Toronto, Canada. We are not in the same house. To debunk any thought about that.
Here's the funniest part about this. The time you actually came here when we went to the AEW show in El Paso, we didn't even record. And we were
Right.
actually in the same, I think we did the audio version that day. We did not do a video version. We did the audio.
We recapped the show real
Recap
quick
the
because we
show,
were
right? Oh,
exhausted.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, trust me on this one. You know, Billy is in Nashville, Tennessee, in a suburb, and I am in El Paso, Texas, and we are not in the same house. We're not even in the same state. We're not even in the same time zone.
Glad
So
we
time
glad
zone,
we could clear that up. Yeah.
state, house. We're not in any of them. And trust me on this one. Billy has a lovely wife who is probably very happy that I am not in the vicinity of their house because she doesn't want to see wrestling and Mercedes Monet matches all the time. And my girlfriend here is probably very excited, even though she does not live in my house, that this is not more than a once a week kind of occurrence. So yeah, funny joke, but 100% not true at all. So we are now going to a top five, and
Toughest one yet.
this is a good one. And Brock 316 is the original submitter of this question. But then four other people asked for it, not knowing Brock already asked for it. So then I said, okay, now people want it. We're going to do it. So
And
everybody,
Monet updates was the stip on No Brooklyn, right?
yes. So behind my co host's wall, behind his shoulder, sorry, is the match that if we were to do a list, the top five women's NXT matches of all time, this is going to be number one on both of our lists. And that makes the list kind of blah because it's boring. Oh, he's gonna rave about Brooklyn. He's gonna rave about Brooklyn. Oh, it changed this. We've done that enough on the show, and then the match deserves its own podcast, its own wing in the Hall of Fame. But we wanted to make this one tough. So what this week's list is the top five women's NXT matches of all time with an asterisk. No Brooklyn. So Brooklyn is like in its own tier. It's retired. Now we have to pick the
It's number
five.
42 on the baseball field. It's
Yeah, it's
just you're not
Jack.
wearing it.
It's
Yeah.
Jackie Robinson's number. It's Wayne Gretzky's number in hockey. It's retired. So what we have to do is pick the five women's NXT matches,
Still impossible.
not Brooklyn, from 5 to 1. And obviously we have honorable mentions. So would you like to go? Would we want to go back and forth five?
Yeah, I needed more asterisks, guys. This is impossible. It's impossible in part because of how much my heart is tied to the horsewomen women's work from 2015. Um, it's impossible because NXT has been the most consistently well booked women's division over the last 11 years. It really has. Um, and the bar is gotten higher. And so if you watch some of these matches from 2015, 16, 17, and then watch a 2021 match or 2022 match, a lot of the 21 and 22 matches might be more well wrestled, but didn't emote the same feeling. Um, so I had a tough time with this. And if you made me do this again next week, I think I would come up with a different top five. And I've left out some stuff. So what I tried to do is I tried to not have the same winner of a match twice.
Okay. So,
So that's the other ground rule I put. I didn't I had to say that I can't pick the same woman winning a match twice.
okay. So I did not use that, but I used this rule for this one. So I went back. There's a lot of women's NXT matches that have been great besides Brooklyn, right? Most consistently booked women's division, probably the last 10 years, the best women's division. So this is what I said. Raja, you're going to make a list of five, not on revisionist history, but the day you watched the match. How did you feel about it? So what I did is I took the five matches that when I saw it, I said this is a 4.5, 4.75, five match. And that was my order. So my honorable mentions are matches that are all great. But the five I picked that live in the moment when I watched, I was like, that might be the second best match behind Brooklyn. And all five of the matches I picked the day I watched them, I thought could have been. And my
Okay.
number and my number one is, in my opinion, the only match in the history of NXT that when I watched it, I thought it might have been better than Brooklyn that day. Now it's not better, but I did think in the moment it might be. So you want it? Let's do this. We will go back and forth on honorable mentions, and then we'll go round. We'll go snake draft 5-4 to 1.
Okay.
So you go
Um,
first.
so I'll give three honorable mentions. First honorable mention is Rival, the four-way four horsewoman match. That would have made my top five if I did not put my ground rules in place, but I have a different match that Sasha Banks was the winner of that made my top five. Um, I love this match. I actually think this match has become underrated, which is hard to do because I will admit that some horsewomen matches become overrated over time. This one has become underrated. Um, they put together a better four-way match than most of the men could do in NXT or the main roster most of the time. you know, so not only were they showing women could do it just as good, they were showing women could do it better. So that's one of them. I have Becky Tiffany, which is a fantastic match, as an honorable mention, and then I have Kyrie Shayna Baszler is a match that I love. I think that was Brooklyn. Is it three or four? Four.
Or
Brooklyn four. Um, really love that match. Um, I watched it back, and if you watch that match back and say that WWE fumbled both Shayna and Kyrie, it makes you really sad. Now I'm gonna say WWE fumbled Kyrie because she already left once. So that version of Kyrie got fumbled, and this is a different version of her that's back now. But when you watch that match, that felt like the future of that they both felt like they were future players for the main roster.
okay, so I have one, two, three, four, five. I have six honorable mention
I
matches.
could have done 10. Yeah, it was so hard. Go ahead.
Horsewomen four-way. Everything you said, I don't have to repeat it. Shayna Kyrie, I also had it. Brooklyn four, as I call it. And then here are my other four. Bailey, Asuka, Dallas.
Great match.
That was the match Bailey lost the title after beating Sasha in Brooklyn and kept it for, almost a year. It was kind of the coming out party of Asuka, and she put her to sleep with the Asuka lock, and that was great. Asuka versus Nikki Cross, last women standing.
Woman standing. Very good match.
The first week in the history of women's wrestling that all three shows main evented with women. Raw, Charlotte, Sasha, SmackDown, Alexa Bliss, Becky, NXT Asuka Nikki Cross. Number three of the four that you didn't already choose. Charlotte versus Sasha Banks, Our Revolution. I thought this was actually the coming out party for Sasha Banks. Now, a lot of people think it's the match that she won the title in, which is the Horsewoman four-way, but I actually thought this was the match that I saw in her, like, oh, this is going to be the best women's wrestler in the world. Like, this is the woman who's going to be the star, not Charlotte. That's one of my favorite matches. And number four, and people are going to be shocked to have this match, but then they're not going to be shocked. Io Sky, Sasha Banks, Great American Bash. Now, did the match live up to my expectations that it would be the best match of all time? It did not. It certainly didn't. But remember this, right now on X, in discussions we're a part of, there is a Michael Jordan, LeBron James argument of Io and Mercedes. And so this is the only time we might ever get to see them wrestle each other.
Yeah.
Ever.
And LeBron and Michael famously played one time at a pickup game where the cameras weren't rolling.
Yeah.
And, Michael fans will tell you Michael was Michael, and LeBron fans will tell you that he, kind of gave Michael the business for part of that. And we'll never know
Mhm.
because the footage ain't getting released. So that's a great,
So those are
that's a
those
great,
are my honorable mentions. So I guess we're gonna go to number five, and I'll go five, and I'll give it over to you, and you could
okay.
do four, five, and four. So my number five, shocker by me, this is so low. I have Io Sky versus Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair. Three-way match. July, I believe, NXT. Io Sky wins the title. The reason that this was number five on my list and not higher. So as a match, this is a tremendous three-way and a blueprint three-way for what we got at WrestleMania. But here's my one knock. Charlotte didn't lose. She was the champion. She did not lose. Rhea got
Right.
pinned. Charlotte is not part of NXT, but she won the NXT title when she shouldn't have, and then she didn't even take the pin here. So I did not like that part of this match, but as a match, phenomenal. So that's my number five match.
I have the, I have, because I want to say my thoughts on that match, and I'll get to that in a second. So I'll name my number five, and then I'm going to go number four, right?
Mhm.
Yep. So my number five, I have. I think this is going to make Chen happy, and I wanted to give respect to this match. I have Meiko Satomura versus Kaylee Ray for the NXT UK Women's Championship. Um, and you'll have to forgive me. I kicked off something that was number five, and I forgot to put in my honorable mention. But I originally had Rhea Ripley and Shayna Baszler, the live TV match, just for its impact, and as my number five, and I forgot to put it honorable mention, so I'll honorably mention that now. But before I finalized my list, I said, I got to put NXT UK representation in here, and I felt like that was my favorite NXT UK women's match ever. Um, and again, WWE do some better with Kaylee Ray. I mean, Alba Fire, I love. If we're gonna get Chelsea with the belt, maybe Alba should be the one to take it off of her, and let's tell that story. Number four, I have Rhea Io Sky versus Charlotte Flair. I love that match. I thought that match was the exact type of chaos you're looking for, especially the way it worked with the In Your House theme. Um, and Io Sky may, in my opinion, and this isn't a slight, I have Mercedes Moné as the best woman in the world. Io Sky is the best women's wrestler in the world at using the environment around her to entertain us, certainly, and did so in this match. I think this was for all of us who were excited when Io came over from Japan. This was like, dang, dude, we finally made it. So this was a great match.
So my number four is a match you had in your honorable mentions. I am much higher on this match than most people are, and it is one of my favorite match. It's definitely my favorite Tiffany match. It's one of my favorite Becky matches, and it's Becky versus Tiffany, the kind of brawl everywhere street fight in Bakersfield, California. Number one, they main evented. That's a huge thing. It was a live audience and it was a sold out house, and it's an arena I'm very familiar with. I've watched probably I did that I wrote this down. Let me see. I've watched 12 wrestling events in that same building. It used to be called the Rabobank Arena. So I know the arena well. I know exactly where they were brawling in that arena. I love this match. I thought this was the best we ever saw of Tiffany Stratton. And even in a loss, she was made a star. And I really had super high hopes for her on the main roster. And I still do, but I think this was the peak of her powers. And Becky was fantastic here. Becky really knew how to make a star. Becky's great with the plunder. I think Becky is the best. I think Becky's the best women's wrestler at using weapons. I think she's up there. Maybe she's not the best, but like Io's good at it too. But like Becky just knows how to make a street fight feel very real. And I love this match. So my number four is Becky Tiffany Bakersfield.
Okay.
So now my number
Three.
three. Yep. This is a match that I am 100% positive is higher on your list. I'm positive. My number three match is Sasha Banks versus Becky Lynch, NXT. Is it Unstoppable?
Unstoppable. Yep.
Okay. At the time when I watched this match, I knew Sasha was going to win because she just won the title, and NXT never just does the quick title reigns back then. So I knew she was going to win. But man, this was Becky's star. The way Becky made Tiffany a star in the match I just mentioned, I thought Sasha Banks came out here with the intent to make Becky Lynch a star. And I thought Becky Lynch, this was really kind of what we knew Becky could become. If you go read Becky's book, Becky thought she was going to get fired until this match. She didn't think she would have a job much longer. So I know these two women who are probably two of my four favorite women of all time, along with Toyota and Io. And these are two women that I have met together. I have a picture with them together when they rented a car from my ex-wife. It's sad for me that these two women who travel together are no longer friends. And it's obvious they're not friends. I don't need to go into gossip, but it's sad because I thought they were magic. And I always thought that these were the two biggest women's stars ever in North America, for sure. Maybe ever. Maybe Rhea's surpassed them now. But I always thought this was a WrestleMania main event, Sasha and Becky. I always did. And I still have hope that it can be one day. But this match was great. I thought it was a technical masterpiece. It's your term, teach tape. I thought this was that. This is how you work a body part and tell a great story. This is my number three match.
Definitely have some feelings about that match that I'll get to. So you kind of said what was my favorite match in the moment is the way you did your list,
Mhm.
and it's why I think people like the way that we do top five is we don't always look at it the exact same way. And I actually went almost the opposite direction and said, what was the long term impact of the match? Um, my number three match is Sasha Banks versus Bailey Iron Woman. And some
Yep.
people might think I have this higher, but Bailey was made in this match, right? This was just solidifying. We got the women's main event, which of course was a very very big deal, and the Iron Woman match and everything. And it's a great match. And there are crew and Hugger Bailey role model fans that think that this is the better match between the two. Some people have this as their favorite, and it is a good enough match that you could say that without getting made fun of. And that is shows you the quality because this is the most, Brooklyn's the most beloved match. But I have it at number three, and the two matches that beat it, you'll see why once I get to talk through them. Number two, I have Asuka versus Ember Moon. And this match would have been my number one if, again, I didn't just take that moment in the night. I still really think it was a gigantic mistake that Ember Moon never beat Asuka, and that actually hurts this match. Brooklyn, as great as it was, if Sasha won, it wouldn't have been as great. Somebody posted on the timeline just the pinning, the Poison Rana, here we go, the Bailey to Belly, and the pin, and I will watch that clip 10 times anytime someone puts it in front of me. And that match wouldn't have been what it was without that 10 seconds. And Ember Moon not winning that match nor the rematch kind of hurts this one, but as a wrestled match, and I know you have it very high, um, I have it number two because the story didn't end up being what I wanted it to be. But damn, Asuka and Ember Moon tore the house down and had people in that moment saying that it surpassed Brooklyn. Though even those people have kind of revised that thought. It was so incredibly good, and it is insane that that they came out with throwing 101 miles an hour. So that is my number two match, Asuka and Moon.
So this is now we have come to the part of this show that I expect when they hear what I'm about to say on two different fronts, a lot of venom towards me, and I'm okay with that. It's fun though. Number one, I think Bailey Sasha Iron Woman is the fifth best Sasha Bailey match ever. I think it's number five. Brooklyn is better. Hell in a Cell is better. Smackdown is better. And Washington, D.C. number one contenders match. Winner faces Alexa Bliss at SummerSlam was also better. Here's why. I hate the concept of the Iron Man, Iron Woman. I think it's the dumbest wrestling concept because I know I've watched every single one of them. The outcome's going to be the last 2 minutes. I know
Right.
that. So I hate it because going in, it's like I'm looking at my watch like, okay, get to the last part already. If you take the Izzy stuff out of that match, I don't know if I'm going to rewatch it over and over again. So yes, it's a very good wrestled match, and yes, it main evented. So that part of the impact it deserves. It main evented. It's the first ever women's match to main event. So yes, historical landmark, bravo. But as a pure wrestling match, it's not very high on my list simply because I don't love the concept of the Iron Woman match. I if it was 2 out of 3 falls, I probably have it on my list. So that's kind of my tug with it. Here's the other um super hot take. My number two match. Io Sky versus Candice LeRae, Toronto. I went back and I watched all these matches, right? And I'm laughing here because yeah, I'm gonna let you talk about this match because you have a better perspective on it than I do. At the time when I watched this match in live in my, in on TV, I'll never forget. I looked at my ex-wife and I said, "This is better than Brooklyn." At the time, I said, "This is better than Brooklyn." I thought this match was so great because I got Io Sky or Shirai. I got the real Io Shirai. This was the first time in WWE I saw the woman who had classics with Mayu and Kyrie and Miko in WWE. I was like, oh, there she is. That's the best women's wrestler in the world. Finally, she's on my screen. This match was fantastic. I love this match. This was like a showcase for Io. I love this match. So I cannot be revisionist history. Yes, I don't like have it historically the way I did then, but I'm trying to keep to the theme here. When I saw it live, that's how I felt. So it's my number two match. Before I give my number one, I will let you rebut because I know you were at this match. You saw it live in person, which I am so jealous of. Go ahead.
Yep, I went. I booked. We weren't close friends yet. I booked a flight to Toronto because I go there for work a lot. After the Boston Hug Connection won the titles at Elimination Chamber, and I figured that they would probably lose them at SummerSlam. which was in Toronto that year, and I was used to going to Toronto, and I wanted to be there to see them put over whatever team that they put over, and obviously that's not how that went. But anyway, I still went. So I went to the NXT takeover and I went to SummerSlam. I figured out why this match didn't resonate with me the way that it did with everyone else. It took me a little bit of work. To be fair, in the crowd, the match was very good. It was over. People thought it was good. What I've said to Raj in the past was there wasn't a buzz after the match, though. It didn't feel like we saw something special that we were, so lucky to have seen. It just felt like we saw a really good match. And here's why. Go back and watch that NXT takeover card beginning to end. And it's a little bit like why I don't like certain AEW pay-per-views now and why I think Mercedes stands out on AEW pay-per-view. There were so many kickouts, near falls, no selling through that whole card that it just that's the way that match felt. Like it fit with that card. And that's not my particular type of wrestling. I'm not hating on Candice and Io. It was a very entertaining match, but that whole card was that was the Adam Cole undisputed Gargano era. I mean, we're talking super kicks and just no sell galore. So I think that maybe my brain was just a little bit and you've even admitted Io and Candice, there's a lot of no selling in the match, and so it's just not my cup of tea. Not hating on it, but seeing it in person, it didn't resonate with me that I saw one of the best matches ever.
When I rewatched this match like 3 days ago, and I took notes on it, and I'm like, oh, Billy must hate this match because there was like literally no selling. Like literally, it was Io kicks her in the face, Candice gets up, kicks her back in the face. Io kicks her, like it was a Joshi women's wrestling match. And
Yeah.
for me, like I said, when Io got signed, I at the time I knew somebody who worked at NXT. He doesn't work there anymore, and I was telling him, I'm like, man, you guys just got the best wrestler in the world. Like this is better than Sasha Banks. Like this is better than Bailey. This is like she's the person. And for
Right.
a while there, it was touch and go with Io. Like she didn't knock it out of the park when she hit NXT. And so this was the first match that I felt like, oh, we got that person. And so when I watched it, I think maybe I'm just more excited as an Io fan, like, oh wow, they let Io be Io. But yeah, I watched this match again and I said, nah, I could see why Billy didn't like this match. Because like they literally it was exact because the main event of that show wasn't it FTR versus Gargano and Champa when they finally won the titles? Or was it they beat was it Jason Jordan and Thing was the main
No, the main event was Cole with the spot off the cage through the tables.
and is this also where Asuka beat Mickey James?
No, let me look at the card again. Oscar was on main roster at the Oscar
Oh no,
was
that was Survivor Series. Yeah, yes, sir.
go ahead with your number one. I'll look up the list.
Okay.
Or actually I got it right here. So the
Oh, you know why I'm confusing? There's two NXT Torontos.
yeah, this one had Velveteen Dream and Pete Dunne, and Roderick Strong, which was no selling. Shayna Baszler beat Mia Yim, and
This
Adam
is
Cole,
Adam
Johnny
Cole.
Gargano.
Yeah,
Two out of three falls
oh
with the
man,
cage
that,
spot.
that match was great. That was a great match. And Velveteen
Yeah.
Dream, yeah, this was an interesting era in NXT. Okay, my number one match, I think you already figured it out, so I'm not
Yep.
gonna, surprise anybody with this one. Oscar versus Ember Moon, NXT 3 Brooklyn. My number one match of all time. In the moment when I was watching this thing live, I legitimately again thought this might be better than Brooklyn. That was the bar. Brooklyn is the bar. I watched it and I was like, oh my God, this match is unbelievable. Another reason why this match blew me out of the water is the weekend before this match happened, Asuka and Amber Moon wrestled a house show in San Jose. And I'm only saying this because, Uncle Dave, who we mentioned on the show, went to the show live. And before they had Oscar wrestle Ember Moon, they showed Brooklyn on the big screen, Sasha Bailey. And he goes, "Man, I just saw Sasha and Bailey and I underrated that match. And then Asuka and Ember Moon put on a stinker." He said the match was like a 1 star. Like the match he saw was like a 1 star. So he's thinking, oh, well, they're going to suck in Brooklyn. And they had the complete opposite match. Like they had an all time classic, which, he was shocked by. So I had these expectations that were very low based on what he said. And when I saw the match, I'm like, oh my God, this is like one of the greatest things I've ever seen. Yes, I agree with you. Asuka winning sours the match a little bit historically. I cannot argue with that. She didn't lose the belt, she gave it up basically. And Amber Moon was never the same in WWE and eventually left and got released by WWE. But at the time, I just thought this match was if Brooklyn is the original, this is the remix. I think this is the only definitive NXT match you can make a case that was even close to Brooklyn is this one. So that's my number one.
It's a great number one. No one can argue with that. My number one, like I said, I kind of used the history and the tale and what happened after to do my ranking. You kind of already touched on it. I have Sasha Banks versus Becky Lynch at Unstoppable as my number one match ever. And it almost rises in prominence for the opposite reason of Asuka Ember Moon dropping in prominence. And that's who knows what Ember's career looks like if she wins, which would have been the right result, at least on the rematch. Becky did lose, but Becky herself would tell you she was very close to being fired at this point, or at least being given up on and not being someone who would have any sort of plans at the main roster. And that's easy to track because even at main roster, she was stop and go for 3+ years. The story was she couldn't gain traction on main roster, is how she ultimately became the man. I don't even think she gets that opportunity to flounder on main roster if she doesn't have this banger with Sasha Banks at Unstoppable.
Well,
So I get one, I love the match and it is an incredibly good technical match. And number two, she's either the number one of the top three women's stars in North America of all time by any measurement, and the other person in this match is another one of the top three. And you said, Rhea may have surpassed them, but this match resurrected those possibilities. So I have it as my number one for that impact.
you have every right to have it as number one match, and honestly, it's probably the match of these five I watch the most.
Yeah.
Of your five and my five, if you take the 10 matches and some of overlap, this is the match I've watched the most. It is, again, I tried to do this not from a revisionist history standpoint, because then I would probably have this number one as well. But Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch, if you watch that match, there's no way you would have thought these would be two of the three biggest women's stars ever in the history of North American women's wrestling, right? And the funny thing is, they went on to carry house shows. These two women, 2019, when Becky was floundering as the champ and the blue hair Banks returned, they were carrying house shows. They were selling tickets on house shows in a time when WWE was not a hot company. They were main eventing versus CM Punk in AEW, right? Like that was the other historical women's wrestling history thing I could have done, which is, they had the commercial free Smackdown match, which was, I thought was phenomenal. Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch to me are the two women that should have main evented a WrestleMania. I know Sasha and Bianca did it, and I know Becky did it with Ronda and Charlotte, but I always felt like Sasha versus Becky was my women's Austin Rock. And I'm very sad that I might never get to see that match again on the biggest stage, because I think they have such animosity now with each other legitimately that I think it would make for a lot of money and really good TV. But if you look at Becky's, read her book, she's always given praise to Sasha Banks about how over she is whenever she returns and whenever she went out there in front of the audience. And I think there's a little like when Becky cut the promo and said, "Yeah, this person got flowers." You could tell there's some resentment there. Like you could tell Becky was never seen as like the golden child, and now she might have become that, but it was never anointed to her like it was for Sasha. And you can tell that there's some real resentment there. Honestly, these two women are two of my favorites ever, and it is like I said, if I'm being revisionist history, it would have been my number one, but I wanted to stay within the theme. But yeah, I can't disagree with you. The match is great. The impact of the match is even greater. And honestly, this is probably going to be one of the most difficult top fives we ever do. This one was very hard.
Yeah, um, as we wrap up, guys, we get it. We didn't even name a Roxanne match or a Lyra match or a lot of Rhea's reign, Tony Storm in NXT UK. Like it's do it yourself. It's hard, right? Raj gave a very compelling list, and he had to leave off, you know, matches that are fantastic. I had to leave off matches that were fantastic, and this would be a 3-hour podcast if we went through the 10 additional matches that could be argued. So, I say that as a good thing. Thank you guys for a compelling top five. They shouldn't be easy and they shouldn't be predictable. So I enjoyed it this week, but it was hard because we like to give credit where credit's due. Um, so, all right. This episode is going to have our blood and guts recap.
Yes.
The women in WWE are barreling towards. We'll start to hopefully see formations of what War Games will look like. Um, and we should be able to recap the Mercedes match versus Nor Phoenix Diana on House of Glory. That House of Glory card, everyone, let's support it. That's their biggest women's card ever. They've got Shotzi Blackheart, Scarlett, Shayna Baszler's on that card. So, women's wrestling fans, this is an opportunity to support a company outside of the big two that is putting their best foot forward with women on this particular card. So, those are my closing thoughts. Anything you want to add?
No, a great week of women's wrestling, besides the title change on SmackDown. And honestly, I'm looking forward to Blood and Guts. You have 12 really good women in this match, and it's new and it's fresh. I've seen a lot of women's War Games matches. I have never seen a women's Blood and Guts match, and I'm very excited to see what it looks like on TV. And honestly, I think Mercedes and Chris are closing the year strong, and they're going to have a case for one of the best matches of the year, if not the match of the year. And I'm really excited to see Stephanie Vacour have to be a true babyface against somebody in Nikki Bella when she turns the volume up. Hi, Chen, I'm giving your girl here praise. Nikki Bella is one of the best heels of all time as a woman. She's a fantastic heel. It's very easy to hate Nikki Bella. She's beautiful, she's rich. And oh, by the way, I want to shout her out because she's an Eagles fan. So we we want to be the bad guy, and she loves being the bad girl. And I think she's going to take Stephanie to a whole new level as a heel because she has so many great talking points of, hey, I was the first Latin woman kind of superstar, and now you're here taking, my thunder. I think we're gonna get the best Nikki Bella, and I think she's gonna bring it out of Stephanie. And I think you're gonna have a really good feud, and I'm excited for it. At least if that's the direction they decide to go in. And then honestly, I'm excited for Liv Morgan to come back and fight Roxanne because I think we're starting to see the Dom Roxanne thing. We're
Yeah.
starting to see it there. So I'm excited for that. They're doing a lot of great things. And honestly, kudos to Charlotte Flair, kudos to Alexa Bliss. I think they're the best. They are, along with Asuka, the best thing about WWE Women's TV right now. I think Charlexa has been a home run, and they're not on the golden role models lawn yet, but they're turning the corner. They're coming.
Yeah.
So that's
All
it.
right. Yep. Thanks. Appreciate everyone listening on any platform that you choose to do so. We appreciate you and thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Thank you.